In 2010, Katy Perry released her record-breaking second album, Teenage Dream, creating a blockbuster pop era, the like of which we haven't really seen since. So just how did Katy pull off such a masterstroke? And who did she really write the one that got away about? What was California Girls inspired by? What Rihanna song could have ended up on the album? Who were the producers Katy was supposed to work with on the record but never got around to? And who was the music for E.T. originally planned for? So many questions, let's find out. In 2009, Katy Perry talked to Rolling Stone about plans for her new album, saying that while she wanted to grow her sound, she would keep it pop and stay mindful of not alienating her core audience. Before sessions began, Katy gave producers a mixtape of songs, including the Cardigans' classic Love Fool and Madonna's Into the Groove, to serve as templates for the new album. The plan was to capture that upbeat pop sound, but as Katy said, to add a little more meat on the bones lyrically. The album was recorded over a 6-month period from late 2009 to spring 2010. Katy had released her debut album in 2008, One of the Boys, an album of mostly pop rock sounds. But by the end of the following year, it was glaringly apparent that the musical landscape had evolved, with a certain Lady Gaga dominating the international airwaves with her electronic sounds. The Avril Lavigne pop rock sound of One of the Boys was starting to sound very dated indeed. The pop music game had changed again, and Katy knew that in order to survive, she would have to change with it. According to an interview with Hit Quarters from 2010, Katy's A&R guy Chris Anacote said she only recorded songs that she loved, which was 14 in total, so as not to waste time. Speaking to MTV in 2010, Katy talked about her schedule whilst recording the album. I'd wake up, go to the gym, go home, go to the studio, come home, wake up and do it all over again. I'd do that every day besides Sunday. Katy also said that songs such as Prince's Little Red Corvette and Ace of Base's The Sign provided musical inspiration for the record. Speaking to MTV about the visuals from her second album, Katy said that she was going to evolve from a Shirley Temple Betty Boop image to a more Betty Page one. Her look would be less bubblegum pink and more metallic fuchsia. Very specific indeed. Whilst the Californian singer had made quite an impact with her first album and the huge hits I Kissed a Girl and Hot and Cold, there was still very much a question mark over her viability as a long-term artist. Many saw her initial success as a fluke she would not be able to maintain. And it seemed Katy was also acutely aware of how much was at stake with her second record. In numerous interviews at the time, Katy spoke of her eagerness to avoid the dreaded second album slump, which had befallen so many artists over the years. It is also nigh on impossible to rebound after a failed second album, so failure really wasn't an option for Katy. According to the same interview with Hit Quarters, California Girls was inspired by Perry's trip to an Oscar after party in 2010, where she watched as revelers went crazy for Jay-Z and Alicia Keys' Empire State of Mind, a song which pays tribute, of course, to the Big Apple. Katy texted her A&R man at 3 a.m. on the way home from the party, saying that she had to write a response song. Teenage Dream and California Girls were the last two songs recorded for the album. Of course, Katy was working for the most part with Max Martin and Dr. Luke, who were responsible for the two biggest hits from her debut. Dr. Luke was famous for his beat making, Max for his melodies, and Katy for her lyrics. And together the three made up a dream team for creating pop perfection. According to an interview with Billboard from 2010, Dr. Luke said that Katy's managers and record label were insisting that the album be finished by February of that year, before those 2 final songs had been recorded. But the super producer pushed to record more songs. The beat for California Girls came courtesy of himself and his young protege Benny Blanco, in the same session as they came up with the music for Teenage Dream. According to a number of reports, Katy looked through Wikipedia to find a West Coast rapper to feature on the track, and decided upon Snoop Dogg herself. Snoop hadn't heard the song before he arrived to add his rap, but nonetheless he wrote and recorded his part within 30 minutes. Mr. Dogg does not like to mess around. California Girls leaked to radio on May 6th and became an immediate smash. The song debuted at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, before climbing to number 1, where it stayed for 6 whole weeks, breaking all kinds of digital sales records at the time. It also hit number 1 in 7 other countries, including Australia, Canada and the UK. The video, inspired by Alice in Wonderland and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, debuted a month later and helped crystallize further Katy's larger-than-life cartoon image. The singer-songwriter also performed California Girls at the MTV Movie Awards. In an interview with the New York Times in 2010, she did however say that the song was annoying. Speaking to Fuse Media in 2013, one of the co-writers of the song, Bonnie McKee, spoke about what its success meant to her. When the song started blowing up, I was surprised, because her first album did well and I Kissed a Girl was great, and it was like, how are we going to top it? And it just caught fire, and it was such a relief for me because I had been struggling for so many years. I felt I could die happy now. I had some mark on pop culture. Teenage Dream, the second US number 1 from the album, was again written and produced by the same team. As already mentioned, the beat for the track was produced by Benny Blanco and Dr. Luke in the same session as California Girls. Benny came up with the beat whilst on a long road trip to LA to work with the super producer. In John Seabrook's book The Song Machine Inside the Hit Factory, Max Martin talked about how Dr. Luke came up with the melody for Teenage Dream. Benny Blanco did a track and then Luke just started singing sounds and nonsense words. And he had this flow where everything that came out was great, including the chorus. He was just standing there and screaming, and it just wrote itself. But whilst the beat and the melody came together quickly, writing the lyrics proved to be more of a challenge. Katy called her old friend Bonnie McKee to see if she could take a stab at the job. McKee and Katy had very similar backstories. Like Katy, Bonnie had moved to LA in search of music stardom. She got signed to Warner Brothers, released an album, Trouble, in 2004, but after the album bombed, she was dropped. Bonnie met Katy sometime later in a thrift store in LA called Wasteland, and the two aspiring songwriters bonded over their struggles to succeed in the music business. But anyway, back to the song. Together, Bonnie and Katy wrote several versions of Teenage Dream. Katy had recently gotten engaged to British comedian Russell Brand, so she was clearly very loved up, which needless to say inspired the whole vibe of the song. Some of Katy's original lyrics for Teenage Dream were characteristically wacky, including the line, "The next thing you know, you're a mom in a minivan." Thankfully, Dr. Luke and Max Martin said no to that one. Most of Bonnie and Katy's ideas were rejected, and the two were starting to tire of all the rewrites. In John Seabrook's book, The Song Machine Inside the Hit Factory, Bonnie spoke about how she eventually cracked the lyrics for Teenage Dream and captured the rush of young love in the song. I thought about my own adolescent years, my own first love. I thought about watching Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet and putting on a little mini disco ball light and just dreaming of Leo. I was like, teenager, that's such a great word. It packs a lot of emotion and imagery into 3 syllables. I finished it and I drove up the coast to Santa Barbara to pitch it to Luke and Max. And Katy and I got there and sang it, and everyone was like, hell yeah. The The song, along with Firework, arguably marks the peak of Katy's creative powers thus far in her career. Even Katy detractors and hard-nosed critics were won over by the charms of Teenage Dream. The track featured in countless Best Song of the Decade lists at the end of the 2010s, and even singer-songwriter Lorde had this to say about the song in 2017 to the New York Times. "When I put that song on, I'm as moved as I am by anything by Bowie, Fleetwood Mac, by Neil Young. It lets you feel something you didn't know you needed to feel. There's something holy about it." Firework, the third single, ended up being the biggest song from the album. Needless to say, usually by the third cut, interest starts to fade in the album campaign. But not so with Firework, which was surely a reflection of the strength of the track. In the States, it of course went to #1 and was certified an astonishing 12 times platinum. Produced by Norwegian hitmaker Stargate, who at the time were two of the biggest pop producers in the world, probably second only to Max Martin and his many proteges. Stargate had scored huge hits at the time, such as So Sick for Neo, Unfaithful for Rihanna, and Irreplaceable for Queen Bee, among many others. In an interview with the BBC from 2010, Katy said that Firework was inspired by a passage in a Jack Kerouac novel, On the Road, which her ex-husband Russell Brand had showed her and which he had said reminded him of her. Stargate came up with the music, and Katy and hit songwriter Esther Dean did the lyrics and melody on top. The two wrote Firework on their first day of working with Stargate. The singer also did album track Peacock with the production duo, a song that Subtlety forgot and which sounded a whole lot like Hollaback Girl Part 2. On NBC's Songland, Esther Dean talked about her inspiration for Firework. Peacock and Firework were the same song really. They were saying show your true colours. Peacock was saying it in a colourful way, Firework was saying it in a sparky way. I don't quite see the connection between the two songs, but as Esther did co-write both of them, I will take her word for it. Katy's vocal for Firework was done in 10 minutes at the end of the session, and Stargate were especially eager to highlight Katy's vocals, which don't always get showcased because of how highly produced her songs usually are. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly from 2018, the duo talked about how they produced Katy's vocals. One of the things we told her was, we're not going to do any harmonies, we're not going to do any fancy vocal takes, it's just going to be you singing it raw. I think it's one of her finest performances because she wasn't thinking, she wasn't trying to be perfect, it was just from the heart. We decided to keep them exactly as they were, without adding choir or overdubs. You only do this with really good singers. Katy was nominated for Best Pop Solo Performance at the Grammys for Firework in 2012, so clearly Stargate got a strong vocal performance from her. In an interview with the Norwegian newspaper VG, the duo were equally glowing about Katy's songwriting talents. I don't think people are aware of how skilled she is at it. She has worked with Max Martin and Dr. Luke, and then it is not always easy to know who really wrote the songs. But when we met her, it was clear to us what a talented and purposeful songwriter she is. E.T. with its more futuristic R&B sound became Katy's fourth US #1 off the album. Amo, one of the writers and producers on the track, talked to Songwriters Universe about how the beat was originally made for the hip-hop group 3 6 Mafia. When Katy heard the track being played in the studio, her curiosity was piqued, and the two, along with Dr. Luke and Max Martin, set about working on the song. The track was written pretty quickly, and it took just a day and a half to finish the whole song. And is it just me, but doesn't the chorus of the song sound remarkably like Tattoo's 2003 hit All the Things She Said? In a feature on the album from Billboard in 2021, it was written that to renew interest in the song and album, which was now 4 singles deep, Kanye West was brought on board. One of the execs at Katy's label remarked in the piece how getting Kanye to do the rap and the cost of making the video both proved to be especially pricey. Clearly Katy knew what was at stake with Last Friday Night, and she threw absolutely everything except the kitchen sink at the video. A marketing campaign usually reserved for lead singles was put in place, with the singer-songwriter adopting a dorky alter ego named Kathy Beth Turry, and the house party video included Hanson, Kenny G, Rebecca Black, Debbie Gibson, Corey Feldman, Kevin McHale and Darren Criss. In an interview with Bonnie McKee with Billboard in 2014, the co-writer talked about where the inspiration for the song came from. Last Friday Night was basically autobiographical about Katy and I. I met Katy in a thrift store in LA and we were both broke songwriters. I invited her to a barbecue and she came over to my house the next day. Literally everything in that song was something that happened, like Barbie on the barbecue, DJ passed out in the yard. The whole thing is real, so we had a good time back in the day. Last Friday Night was of course the song that made history for Katy, becoming the 5th #1 single from her album Teenage Dream. The album tied with Michael Jackson's Bad for the most #1 singles off one record. And Last Friday Night also helped Katy achieve another feat, the most continuous stay of any artist in the US top 10 ever, with an incredible 69 weeks starting in May 2010 and concluding in September 2011. Impressive stuff. And the 6th single from the album, which in itself is a huge achievement and also my favourite song off the record, The One That Got Away. Floria Sigismundi, who did the video for E.T., directed it, and at the time of recording the song was sitting at just under 1 billion views, which again is testament to how the song and video have resonated with people over the years. In a weekend-long live stream to promote her 4th album Witness in 2017, Katy confirmed the song was written about Josh Groban, who she dated in 2009. Mr. Groban was said to be flattered when he heard the news, although he did remark in interviews at the time that he's never actually owned a Mustang or had a tattoo, so who knows. Talking to MTV in 2010, superstar songwriter Ryan Tedder said that he and Katy had talked about working together on her 2nd album and that he was working on 3 songs for her with a 90s roller skate vibe. But as Katy only recorded 14 songs for the album, they probably never got to work together in the end. In an interview with Hit Quarters from 2010, Katy's A&R man also said Rodney Jerkins at one point was supposed to work on the album, but it doesn't seem that ever happened either. And whilst Katy was working with Stargate, she heard another track the duo were working on and she loved it so much she said she wanted to take it. The song turned out to be Only Girl in the World, and as it had already been secured for Rihanna, Katy couldn't have it. And she included the song on her California Dreams setlist the following year as a cover. Speaking to The Guardian in 2009, the frontman of American rock group Weezer, Rivers Cuomo, said that he was working with Katy Perry at the time also, although nothing seems to have ever come of that either. The reissue of the album was released in March 2012, a whole 18 months after the album was originally released. The lead single, Part of Me, went to #1 in the UK and America, becoming the 6th #1 from the era. Although it was from the re-release, so I don't think it counts as breaking the record for most #1s from an album. And Wide Awake, the other new song from the reissue, was also a hit throughout the world. Teenage Dream debuted at #1 in the US with 192,000 copies sold, and it received 7 Grammy nominations in total, including Album of the Year and Record of the Year for Firework. The album is said to have sold approximately 7 million copies worldwide. During the Teenage Dream era, Katy seemed unstoppable, and she truly solidified her place as a pop superstar. The Katy Perry aesthetic of bright colours and cartoon imagery fully crystallised during this period. In some ways, Katy created such a strong sound and persona with Teenage Dream, it's been challenging for her to try and grow beyond it. Each music video was very ambitious and Katy clearly gave it her all. Whilst her marriage to comedian Russell Brand didn't survive the album cycle, she can at least take solace in the fact that the relationship did inspire some pretty brilliant pop songs. The meticulously constructed tunes and American teen pop sound were unashamedly commercial. Katy wasn't trying to make a grand artistic statement, she embraced pop music and culture wholeheartedly on the record. With Teenage Dream, Katy set the bar so high for pop eras, it will be pretty hard for anyone to ever eclipse. Despite achieving astonishing success with Teenage Dream and receiving 13 Grammy nominations throughout her career, the superstar has never actually won any. If you'd like to learn why she might not have ever taken home the coveted prize, check out this other video. And if you got value from this video, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.